We have to make sure that everybody right now feels free when you're sick to go to a doctor, regardless of your income. And you know what? The government will pay that bill. Number two, we are the only major country on earth not to guarantee paid medical leave. So if you can believe it, there are people who are sick today who may actually believe they have symptoms of the coronavirus who are going to work because they have no income. You know, they're making $12, $13 an hour. They got to feed their families. They go to work. We have got to do what every other country on earth does and guaranteed paid family and medical leave and do it right now on an emergency basis. There was a discussion recently. There's a lot of work being done globally in terms of a vaccine. And the Trump administration was saying, well, we can't guarantee that it will be affordable. We've got to worry about the drug companies. Well, that is a crock. That is ridiculous. We have got to make sure that when that vaccine comes out, it is available to everybody in this country, regardless of their income.
So what you just heard there was Bernie Sanders last night on Jimmy Fallon, making the case that in this moment of crisis with the coronavirus and other major issues, that we have no excuse but to ensure, as a basic human right, universal healthcare access for all. And that right existed before, or should have existed before, the coronavirus. But this particular pandemic, this particular moment, has sort of opened people's eyes to the fact that one of the reasons there will be struggles in addressing this major concern is that many people don't have consistent access to the medications they need, to the treatments they need, and in addition to that, to ensuring that they have protections from being dismissed from work, that they have the money they need to live day to day, that they're not burdened by their debts while they're unable to work, and on and on and on and on. And what Naomi Klein said on Twitter today was something very important, that Bernie Sanders was the one who she thinks needs to be president, that he is the one in a moment of crisis that can serve the people, that has the competence, that has the ability, that has the experience, the wisdom, but also the sense of justice. And a clear sense that he gives a damn first and foremost about working class people. And it's in these moments where a crisis happens and decisions have to be made that you want a president, you want a prime minister, you want a leader that cares about working class people more than anybody else. You want somebody that cares about working people and their needs, and not the needs of the rich and wealthy and well-connected, and not the needs of the biggest and most powerful and wealthiest corporations, but regular people. And that doesn't mean there won't be issues. With the coronavirus, there will be issues no matter how effective the response is. But that you mitigate those issues as far as they're affecting regular folks, their children, their communities. That's why people want Bernie Sanders in charge. Somebody who understands that, yes, workers need to self-isolate as much as is possible. But you can't ask them to do that if it means that they're going to end up homeless. If it means that they're going to end up suffering for months and months and months for making the right decision for themselves, who don't have good immune systems, for the elderly, for the young, and on and on and on. You shouldn't force somebody between making the right decision and facing severe social and economic harm for making that right decision. So Bernie Sanders is the man in this moment. And you're seeing that Donald Trump is woefully unprepared. He's misled people about the realities about the vaccine. He said that it's available. He said that it would be affordable. All of these things are either lies or just things he's spouting, and then afterwards it comes out that he didn't run anything by anybody, and what he said may or may not be accurate on any particular moment of any particular day. That's unacceptable from a president when he's talking about the most boring, routine pieces of news, but it's especially egregious in moments like this with the coronavirus and other pandemics. That's my view, at least. So Bernie Sanders is the one for this moment. It's not Joe Biden. Joe Biden has demonstrated more than anything in this campaign a reluctance to meet with the media, a reluctance to state his views clearly, a reluctance to put a clear path forward on how he's going to approach the presidency. Because Biden knows the more exposure he takes in the media and the more he expresses his views clearly, the more people dislike him. Folks are voting for Biden, one, because they think he can beat Trump, and that may or may not be true. I'm skeptical, but it's possible, I guess. And two, they actually think he supports Medicare for all. They think he supports a lot of the progressive policies Bernie does. And so whenever Biden comes out and defends his, Medicare public option type choice thing, which will leave 10 million uninsured and will likely be the sort of system that doesn't protect the most vulnerable when it comes to the coronavirus, it doesn't look good for him. So Biden's not showing leadership. Trump's not showing leadership. Bernie Sanders is showing leadership right now. And even here in Canada, we have to say that some of our more progressive politicians are showing leadership. I'm not a defender of Justin Trudeau. I don't think he's really that progressive, but I commend him and his wife for taking the precautions to self-isolate. Justin Trudeau's wife, Sophie Gregoire Trudeau, was off at a conference in Europe. She came home, was feeling symptoms, and got tested for the coronavirus. We don't know if she has it or not, but she's self-isolating. And Justin Trudeau, of course, because he's been with his wife, frequently, is also self-isolating. And closer to home for a lot of us on the left here in Canada, Jagmeet Singh, the leader of the NDP, is also self-isolating because he fears he may have the coronavirus. Doctors say it's unlikely, but Jagmeet says, I'm not feeling well, and this is less about me and more about the most vulnerable people in society. And that's why it really matters when you have politicians like Jagmeet Singh and Bernie Sanders with their policies and their personal actions centering the needs of the most vulnerable. Those are people who are going to be good leaders. When Bernie Sanders centers how the coronavirus could be addressed through systematic planning and a universal healthcare program that takes care of everybody, he's right. And when Jagmeet Singh says it's not about whether you think you're healthy enough to go outside or you're worried about how the coronavirus might affect you, but rather what it's going to mean for the elderly, for those who are truly at risk of the consequences of the disease that may end up losing their whole life because of it. And so you have to think about them. So if you feel you have it, if you have the symptoms, if there's a reasonable expectation that you've traveled or you've been around people that have traveled, then you should look to self-isolate insofar as you can. And for the rest of us, we have to push our officials in Canada and the USA to make it possible for working class people to self-isolate and protect themselves and their families without sacrificing their finances. We need leadership in this moment, and it's not coming from Donald Trump. It's not coming from the right. It's coming from people like Bernie Sanders and Jagmeet Singh. Andrea Horwath here in Ontario, the leader of the opposition, also NDP. She's been holding Doug Ford to account, saying basically that, workers can't self-isolate. We can't stop this until we ensure that working class people are taken care of as they do the right thing for the community. So let's keep pushing, guys, because this is a political issue. We often like to say when we have issues like this that they transcend politics, and we wish they would. They should transcend politics, but they don't, because there are some people out there more worried about imaginary numbers on the Dow or S&P than they are about lives of working people and how we can preserve them. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. As you might know, YouTube is pretty much systematically demonetizing any video that mentions the coronavirus. I get why they don't want people spreading misinformation, but I also think that, folks who are providing, good coverage of the issue from a social and political perspective, economic perspective, deserve to have their work monetized. Be that as it may, if you want me to make videos on important stories like this, even if they're not monetizable, consider joining the channel as a YouTube member. You can click the join button just below the video, or consider supporting me on Patreon. If you do either or both of those things, you're helping the channel and you're giving me the opportunity to cover stories that may not be advertiser friendly here on YouTube. And if you are already supporting the channel, thank you so much for that support.